Rick, how you doing?
I'm good, Keith. How are you doing?
Good, man. It's been a while. Give me a hug from me.
Good to be, good to be, good to be.
Thank you, man. So good to see you. You know, it's been a while since I saw you. Last time I saw you, I was at your place for Thanksgiving, and you put on quite a spread.
Oh, you were the hit of the party, man. I tell you, you walked in, and everybody was just really happy to see somebody supporting me from Phoenix, because they've always talked about you. And I think you've met a couple of those people before, but when you came in and supported me, I just felt so empowered and so happy, and like I really mattered. So.
Oh, you totally matter. And yeah, it's my first time meeting all those people. I didn't know anyone.
Oh, okay.
And you have the best friends, and you know, I got a chance to talk to them and kind of get to know them. It was just an awesome experience. So thank you for making me always feel welcome. The food was amazing, and the conversations were great.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, the nice thing, too, that I think was that we were outside, and you know I'm a big advocate for
outside,
being outside and enjoying your life and being part of nature, because I think that's part of the human experience that we often miss.
Absolutely. You know, and I just felt like one of the things we talk about in our podcast is being in the present moment. And what I loved about it was I left my phone in the car, and I was able to just really be present to everyone's conversation, what they shared, how beautiful it was. And I was just filled with gratitude the whole time.
I thank you so much, Keith, for making a difference in my life on all levels, but particularly in Thanksgiving, for coming all that way and spending time with my friends. They just loved you, and it was a wonderful time.
It was great. You know, I can't wait to come back up and just talk to everyone. It was a fantastic time.
Always welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. So, Rick, for today's show, I thought we'd do a show about the events that have shaped our lives. So
Great.
The title of the show
Great.
is What Events Have Been Your Biggest Teachers?
You know, this is a knockdown, drag-out one. You know, this could go down some dark roads, right? Because we're all, I think, people who try our best, but often don't get a great result. And then dealing with the fact that you don't get a great result sometimes puts you in a frame of mind where you think, hey, I must have done something in my life that has caused this to happen to me, and you kind of spiral down.
Right.
On the other hand, you can also use negative things to buoy you, to help you realize that there is something that you need to get a kernel out of what that bad experience is that will help you become a better person.
Absolutely.
So let me give you one.
Okay.
Okay. I was about 10 years into my, now a little longer than that, 15 years into my law career. And I never had a major loss. I mean, I lost cases, but I never had a major loss that were in the newspapers, and part of the loss had to do with me. I never had experienced that. I tried a 10-week, that's a long time, 2.5 months, jury trial in federal court. And I was representing a very large client, and I lost. And I lost to the tune of $9 million. That was a shock to me, first of all, because I didn't think, based on how I analyzed the case, that it was going to go badly.
Right.
And I worked and worked and worked and worked probably harder than I had in any other case. So I had the effort, I had the track record, I thought I had facts, and I thought I had made great arguments, and I lost. That put me in a position to question whether I had any ability to do this work at all. And I took a good month off and tussled with that. I really had a hard time with it. And the kernel that came to me, two things came to me, two kernels that came to me that are still important to me to this day. One is, no matter what the circumstance is, you have control of your reaction.
Yes.
The circumstance is irrelevant, no matter how painful, how difficult. That is just a stimulator. You're the one who still controls the reaction to the stimulation. So that was one realization that came from it. Secondly, there's a very important lesson about letting go of things when you've been unsuccessful.
Right.
Or when you've committed, let's say, a domestic felony, or you've done something, that's offended another person. It's your fault.
Right.
But letting go of it is redeeming.
Right.
Forgiving yourself is redeeming. So the two things, again, are the self-redemption concept, the idea of forgiving yourself, detaching and letting it go. That was one thing I learned from it. And the other thing that I learned from it was, no matter what, you still have the ability to always react to
Right.
however the stimulus hits you. Doesn't matter how difficult it is.
So what, if you mind if I'll give you a
Yeah,
follow-up
no,
question?
yeah, sure. let's
First
go.
of all, thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Did you have to learn that lesson again about letting go?
I've had to, yes, I don't think it's ever, it always has to be thought of in my mind. I can't just learn something once and then
Right.
that's it. It keeps recurring. But every time it recurs, I can say, oh yeah, this is what my
Right.
lesson is. Oh yeah, I have to be mindful of this.
Exactly.
So monitoring it, it's, if anything, it's a red flag to monitor that kind
Right,
of behavior.
exactly. So then you become in control of how you respond to whatever the event happened, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, tell me, what are yours?
What one of mine is, this one I had to learn twice.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I had to learn it twice, and it was being attached to material things. I grew up with this inflated sense of myself that I wasn't a materialistic person, because I just think when you're materialistic, I think it's negative. At least that's what I believed. And I didn't think I was, and it was one of those things that just kind of happened over time. So when I started doing financial planning, after a few years, started making, some decent money, 6 figures, and bought a nice house, and it was my first home, and had the luxury car, and all those things. But as all that's happening, I'm not really conscious that I'm becoming attached to these material things. And so when the market corrected, the stock market corrected in the early 2000s, the tech bubble burst. When that happened, I started becoming late on my mortgage payments. They were calling me about the car. All these things, and I held on. And the sensible thing to do, and somebody who's in finances knows to do, is okay. You can't afford that now. Turn them back in or downsize from the house, get something small that you can afford. Turn the lease in of the car early. But because I was so attached to material possessions, and I had started to align who I was with them, I just felt so much failure and shame if my neighbors or my friends saw me moving or turning the car in and driving something that was used and 10 or 15 years older. And so that was just a painful lesson that I went through. And
How did you?
I just suffered a lot because I was so attached to this identity of being quote unquote successful, having made it. And the material things went along with that.
How did you get to the point where you thought, hey, this is not serving me anymore very well? How did you get to the point where you just stopped, or you turned it around, or let the car go, or how did you deal with that?
There were all kinds of opportunities for me to become aware of it. My ego was running the show, so I just wasn't. I wouldn't allow any consciousness to come into it. So the fact that I was parking in Arizona heat, parking a quarter mile from the front door of the gym, so no one would see my used car, to walk in the gym should have been like, dude, you care that much about what people think?
Yeah.
Those kind of indications. But there were a couple of things that happened. One was my mom coming out for a visit when I sold the house and had to go with something smaller, and me kind of explaining away, because she never saw the first house that I had on the golf course. So having to try to explain to her, hey, I wish you could have seen the first house. And every time I came in, I was always trying to explain it away, and this house isn't really what I want. And she's like, why don't you have all these pictures up on the wall and whatnot? And I was like, well, I'm not really happy with this house. I'm only going to be here temporarily. End up being there for 15 years. Yeah, it's temporary. And so, and she just, and I was complaining, about the used car I was in, and just why don't you keep the car clean? Why don't you wash it and stuff like that? And she just kind of set me down one day and it's like, Keith, whatever you want, you're not going to get, because you're not grateful for what you already have. And so she said, so I came in one day when she was on a visit, and she put all the paintings up on the wall. And then it started to kind of transform the place. And she made me promise to wash the car on a regular basis so that I can show gratitude for what I had, and to encourage me to park closer to the front door if there was an open spot of what I would normally do. When I was driving the Lexus, I had no problem pulling right up front. And so so her conversation with me, which was a gift, and the other thing that really helped was I just got tired of suffering. It was so much suffering and hiding and perpetuating this lie about success and what my life was like. It was just a burden, Rick. It was heavy. And Eckhart Tolle says, when you see somebody who keeps doing the same thing over and over, and they keep, doing things that aren't healthy for them, whether it's worrying, anxiety, some kind of addiction, like when will they change? When they're done suffering.
Yeah, or when the suffering becomes so great, you get more leverage by less suffering, even though it's a harder choice.
It's a harder choice. Yeah, so the suffering just got to that point. So the lesson that I learned from that was, and I had to repeat it, not to that level, that extent of suffering, but I did repeat it again, maybe 10 years later. But when I repeated it again, I was recognizing it fast. I was able to move past it fast pretty quickly. And but the lesson I learned is attachment to material things, like how I define myself, and I don't do that anymore. I get a Prius now that is, 11 years old. I've got a Mercedes that is 15 years old. Both drive well. They're paid for, and and there's no debt associated with it. So. We live in North Scottsdale, and you live in Sedona, and there's a lot of affluence and wealth, and there's fancy cars all around, and I can look at those cars and be like, oh man, that's a nice car, without thinking that I've underachieved by not having, or even wanting it for myself. I don't have any of that. Yeah. I was like, I just look at it like, hey, that's a beautiful flower, or that's a nice painting, without feeling any kind of identity with it for myself or wanting it. It's been quite the journey, but that lesson I had to learn one time in a big way and on a lesser scale the second time, but I learned it.
One of the things I think that might help viewers too is to talk about some of the things that each of us does to try to get past that block, and that block that you had was associating something materially with who you are internally, which of course never works, but so is there anything that you do now, a practice of any kind, where you can kind of, once you monitor and see that that's happening, you can talk yourself out of it? How do you do that?
What I do right now is, it doesn't come up to me often because of the daily ritual that I have with reading and being reminded about not identifying with the ego, that I'm not my thoughts. So it doesn't come up as much now. But that's only because it's been almost 3 years of every day, not missing a day, practicing, cultivating those kinds of thoughts of being more conscious, being more awake, and not being aligned with ego. And when it does come up, I can feel my body kind of tense, and I can feel myself not be as peaceful and calm. And so by being aware of that, I'm able to say, okay, what's that? Where's that coming from? Oh, I am feeling, possessive, or wanting something outside of myself, or I'm looking at something externally to make me feel fulfilled or validated. And as soon as I notice that, I'm able to just bring an awareness to it, and then it just kind of dissipates.
And I think what the viewers probably know, but we need to underscore for them, is that habit that you're talking about, the way that you live your life, begins in the morning with positive thoughts and tapes and so forth. And then throughout the day, occasional short-term meditation, and then also staying physically fit and being outdoors. This is a whole lifestyle that allows you, I think, to be more aware of things like that intrude on your inner peace.
Absolutely. And for me, the reason that it has become almost effortless now, instead of effortful, but effortless now, is because I do it every single day. I do not miss a day. And I think, so it's not about intensity of when there's some major crisis in my life. I started to, for some people, get into scripture and religion. For other people, it may be to go see a therapist. Whatever it takes for you. I don't wait for some kind of challenge to arise to show up before I do that. I'm doing it every single day, because after the challenge, passes, then I'm back to doing things that I used to, and then I become more susceptible to it happening again. So by doing it every single day, I feel prepared.
Yes.
And it becomes easy.
Well,
what about you?
Well, I was going to say I'd make 2 points. I think a healthy lifestyle, first of all, is extremely important.
It's key.
But the meditation for me is the thing that did it. Meditation it allows you to avoid those cataclysmic upsets. They still occur, of course, but your reaction to them is much more controlled because you're used to going into a place that really is calm and peaceful. And even when something rattles you that's huge,
Right.
you can still reach that same place of peace and calmness. It may take you a little longer. The monkey mind may be chattering a little harder at you, but because you have the practice already underway, you're used to it. It's just like training for football or training for skiing or anything else. Repetition and being in that zone helps.
Right.
One other tip, though, that I think might help some of the viewers who don't have a practice yet or are not satisfied with the practice and they still are experiencing a lot of upset. When I went through that terrible loss of that case, I did go to a therapist. I went to a psychiatrist to help me sleep and help me understand why I had so much invested in this thing.
Right.
And he suggested one thing that I've done since occasionally, and I think it's very helpful, and that's this. If you're able to detach from your circumstance and take like 100-foot view and almost come out of your body and
Right.
look down at yourself and watch you struggle with another person or struggle with an issue, finances, for example, or
Right.
debt, and just watch how you're doing it without judging it. That's the key to mindfulness.
Right.
Again. It's just being aware without judging.
Right.
And allow yourself to see it. You can start giving yourself tips. Like, if this was another person, what I would tell that other person
Absolutely.
is get rid of the damn Lexus.
Right. Exactly.
Hang the pictures in the
house.
house.
Right.
Yeah. So I think these things are we're aware of, and we're self-correcting mechanisms as humans.
Right.
But you have to tap into it in a way that allows you to get outside of yourself to see yourself.
Absolutely. And until you develop the ability to do that, I think it's important that you are vulnerable and you share with other people in your life what those challenges might be that you're going through. But not sharing so they can tell you, oh my God, I know what that's like. And they keep you in that, they help you stay in that space. And so that feeds any kind of victimhood mentality. But rather that they are able to be your eyes from that 100-foot view that you talked about. And you be open to how they, give you suggestions of overcoming that or working through it.
Well, I would say a big caveat there, a big caution, and that is that you have to be very careful with whom you share because there are a lot of people who love to support victimhood because
Right.
they're victims and they give you that so then they can claim it back from you when it's their turn.
Yeah.
And that's horrible. You don't want to get into that. That circle is not serving you. It's no good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Rick, those are mine. Thank you for sharing yours. I love the show topic, man.
That was a great one. We could do like an hour in this. This would be a fun one to do in a studio with more people here and just kind of throw things out and talk about what things people have learned and how they've dealt with it and what strategies they have moving forward after the loss.
Oh, I love it. I love that idea. We should do that.
I think a studio idea would be great with a lot of folks. It'd be cool.
Be great.
Plus, we'd have a buffet.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't you do it.
Okay, I know. He's a vegetarian.
Right, don't you do it.
He eats hot dogs.
I do not eat hot dogs. Thanks, Rick. I love you, man. Thank you.